Hello, we are Ask the Axons.
And we'll talk about neuroscience.
In our first episode, we're going into the frontal lobe, and this includes the prefrontal cortex, which is responsible for executive function like personality.
And then primary motor cortex for voluntary movements like lifting stuff.
And then the Broca's area, which is responsible for language, comprehension, and speaking and writing.
And then dopamine pathway, which is, I think, pretty clear. We'll talk about that later. This is the first episode of the brain series. So I think we should first talk about neurons, since those are pretty important in the brain.
Yeah.
So, nerves are made up of many neurons. And
and they're all connected to each other. Well, semi-connected, because there's actually a synaptic gap. But, through the role of neurotransmitters, which we'll learn about in a second, they can, communicate with each other. So.
Yeah, so neurotransmitters are these chemicals that are used to send little messages for what the body should do by the neurons. And they are received from the dendrites, which are like the hair.
Ew,
hair of the neurons. So the postsynaptic neuron will receive the charge from the presynaptic neuron, and then the charge will travel through the axon to the terminal buttons, and in the terminal buttons it will
they have the neurons have vesicles that basically store the neurotransmitters, and then they are released through the terminal buttons for the connecting neurons to eat them up, gobble them up.
So the neurotransmitter is released in the cleft. It binds to a receptor there, which will be important for the dopamine thing later.
And also just many other functions, like if you think of acetylcholine, for example, with memory, like there are, of course, many different regions in the brain, and so neurotransmitters can activate different functions depending on which neurons they bind to.
Yeah. So how a hormone has a specific cell that it binds to do a specific function, specific neuron is released also in specific, not neurotransmitter. Specific neurotransmitters released in specific places to do a specific function.
Okay. So also the central nervous system consists of the brain, which, we love, right? That's where we are. And then the brain stem, the spinal cord. Yes.
That's it.
That's
it. Like, you mess up. That's why they can't do head transplantations, because they don't know what to do with the spinal cord, because it's so complicated. You can't really connect it or disconnect it from the brain.
Yeah, so don't break your neck or your spine, because that could really do some damage. It could kill you.
Yes, exactly. You can get paralyzed.
Yeah.
Your brain will just shut off. So,
and then there's the PNS, or the peripheral nervous system, which is it kind of spans throughout your body, and it's just sensing the stimuli, touch. For example, if you touch your hand, then your peripheral nervous system will send the signals to your CNS to process that information.
Yes, that's how that works.
Yes.
I can mention a little bit about localization, which is basically, it's a theory, but it's not. It is, but it's not, whatever.
Yeah.
It's basically how specific regions of the brain are responsible for specific tasks, like how Broca's area, which we will talk about, is specifically responsible for speech and production of speech. So first, before localization, there was this thing called phrenology, where they would basically touch the skull of a person, like their head, and there were specific places to determine specific things. Like for instance, you had a bump somewhere, and then they were like, "Oh, this means that you like this coffee instead of that coffee," or like I don't know that you are very suspicious, or like you are gonna be a fucking criminal. Um, yeah. So that was their first theory, which I mean, it was pretty close to localization because
But simultaneously so
yeah, it
wrong.
was very wrong, and it justified racism a lot because
Yeah.
well, not only different people have different skulls, but also different races have different skulls, as we know.
Yeah.
So
And also, it doesn't consider that the brain is more than just its surface, there's so
yes,
much more inside.
yes. Yeah. So we can move on to the frontal cortex.
Yeah, the prefrontal cortex,
Yes.
which
So
is at the
that's
very tippy top, at the forehead, Like if you bash your forehead, you're touching your prefrontal cortex, basically.
yeah, you know about that.
Yeah. So,
Um,
with personality, it's really interesting because there's one condition called what was it? The frontal temporal dementia. Yeah.
yes.
And, you know, there are actually several variations, but one of them is a behavioral change. And that can really be frightening for both the person who's going through that condition and also, their loved ones and their friends who have to experience changes in behavior and
Mhm.
personality.
Basically, they are able to remember like who they were before their personality changes, and they don't know that it changes. It doesn't feel to them like they are
Mm-hmm.
changing, but there can be very drastic changes. Like, I mean, Phineas Gage, he probably messed up his
Oh yeah,
that part of the brain
yeah.
because his personality completely changed. Nothing else really happened to him. Like he was alive, which for
Should we talk about Phineas Gage just
yeah,
a second?
yeah, yeah,
So, like, this guy, he was working on a railroad. He was a railroad worker, and a rod shot through his skull and totally smashed up his frontal cortex.
yeah,
Like, I'm pretty, at least in one video, some of his brain,
yeah,
like, parts in the
yeah.
frontal cortex, like, kind of flew out of his skull.
Yeah, because I think the doctor he will not believe him that because the rod went like through his chin, like through the top of his head, and he like walked like he was fine, like he was
Yeah.
completely fine. He went by himself, and then the doctor was like, No way, you just came here. Like this rod went through your head,
Yeah.
so he wouldn't believe him. So then he like coughed, and the fucking brain part came out of his head, and the doctor was like, Maybe we should check this out.
Yeah.
Maybe you're right.
Uh-huh. And then, of course, his friends were like, Phineas, you're not really Phineas anymore. So he probably like lost some friends, but he didn't care because he was doing his own thing at that
Yeah,
point.
his
But
personality.
yeah,
I
and
mean, yeah, they said that he became more aggressive and
yeah.
like yeah, basically opposite to what he was before that. Yeah, and that's probably what
Oh
happens.
yeah. Also, we wanted to mention, like, if you watch Adventure Time, Ice King is such a wonderful example for frontotemporal dementia because in the past he was like this wonderful Simon Petrov or whatever his name
Yeah,
was, and he was so like he was caring for Marceline and he really wanted to protect her, but over time, like his temporal lobe got damaged,
it's the crown. It damages
Yes.
frontal cortex.
Yes, exactly.
Well, sorry if we spoil Adventure Time for you, but well,
Yeah. And then of course he becomes Ice King and
yeah, completely forgets who he
yeah.
was. That's the difference. He doesn't have any memory of what he was. He's
He
just
really
like,
doesn't. And he
no.
laughs about it too. He's like,
Yeah, it's
"Oh, I was
like,
like that? Cool."
yeah. He's like, like so chill about it. He's like the guy in the video.
Yeah, there was this video that we watched.
60 Minutes.
Yes, that's
Shout
our
out.
reference. Yes, and one of the guys, one of the people who had this condition, I don't know. I thought his name was Mark, but I don't remember.
Yeah, me neither.
He was the husband of this wife who had 4 kids, and then like he at first he was a really loving husband, and then he was diagnosed with, well, he wasn't diagnosed, but he this condition kind of subsumed his life, and then yeah, there was some big changes that happened to him and consequences to his family because he was doing some pretty bad stuff like robbing,
Yeah.
lost his job
Yeah.
because of the suspicion, very
Sexual assault, I would say, like just
yeah.
being inappropriate.
Mm.
Yeah. Basically, also like they lose their joy in life.
Not necessarily joy. I think they're just vibing. It's more about like
Oh,
they're impulsive because
yeah.
with their dopamine, they can't control it. They can't control their reward centers.
And we can.
But it's interesting because in another study with the blue squares, for example,
Oh yeah.
yeah, like this person did a study and then she basically shocked people whenever they saw a blue square.
No, she told them that she
Oh yeah,
will.
yeah. She told them that she would shock people if they saw a blue square, and then she showed a bunch of shapes with different colors to them, and put them in an fMRI.
That's some sort of brain scan.
Yeah,
I
in a
don't
brain
remember.
scan. And then she saw that what was it, the amygdala?
Yes.
It was the amygdala that was activated, even though they were never shocked. They whenever they saw the blue square, their amygdala was activated, and that kind of shows how the frontal lobe can kind of have this theoretical threat that can activate the amygdala. So, with the amygdala, which is like processing emotions and regulating that process. Yeah, the frontal lobe can have a role in that as well.
Yeah, and there were also examples where when you experience something stressful like exam,
Yeah.
and then you get all like shaky because of anxiety, and then the frontal cortex helps you to like calm down, be like rational, like it's just a test, it's fine, like I'm safe, there's no
Mhm.
lions chasing me, I'm good. So that's what frontal cortex also does. Going back to frontal temporal dementia,
Yeah.
there's also the not behavioral, but what was the other one? Speech.
Yeah, speech.
Speech connected to speech dementia, where people just start being kind of unable to utter some of the words,
Yeah.
and we were thinking that it's probably because of bronchus area, because it's in the frontal lobe.
But the Broca's area, like we mentioned previously, that's responsible for, processing language, but also like verbalizing it and writing it. So if
Yeah.
that part of the brain is damaged, yeah, you're gonna have some difficulties
Yeah.
reading and writing, and maybe, yeah.
Because you may be able to know what you want to say, but just not be able to say it. Like your system will just not be able to respond to that. And there was this woman who was also, she had the
Frontotemporal.
but the
Dementia?
speech one,
Yeah,
the
yeah.
speech one,
It was just a speech variant. Yeah.
and she wasn't able to like recognize herself in the mirror. Like she said it's she was just unable.
Hmm. And interestingly, like there can also be like good and bad moments. So it's not always that she struggles to verbalize her words.
It's not all the time. It's just
Yeah.
sometimes. And also, all of these people, this is a fatal disease. Um, yeah, there's no cure yet, or like
Mhm.
no medicament that could slow down the results.
So let's go in depth. Let's go more in depth in the marshmallow study. So this is basically an experiment done on young little people.
Little,
Yeah,
not
and
formed.
yeah, exactly. Their brains are still developing, obviously. So the frontal lobe, which is like, it's more up there evolutionarily. So it's, of course, the brain stem and like the midbrain is the first to develop, and then it slowly reaches out, and the frontal lobe is one of the last parts to fully develop. And that's considered to be more when you reach your like 20s or something. So yeah, with these kids, their frontal lobes are not developed. And you want to tell them?
What do I say? I mean, they
Well, the
were.
experiment,
Yeah, they were. They placed children in a room by themselves and placed a marshmallow in front of them
Yeah.
and told them to either, you know, they said you can eat this if you like, but if you don't and if you wait for me to come back, I will give you another one. And then they were just testing, which kids would eat the marshmallow or which kids would wait for it.
Yeah. And so then the adults left the room for a while, and then there were cameras to spy on them. They didn't know they were filmed, I don't think.
Yeah, I
But
don't think so.
yeah, some of the kids, they waited, and then others just ate it immediately, which is kind of relatable. But it shows how, if in people who don't have their frontal lobes fully developed, they don't always have the best impulse control.
Yeah, and just the agony in their faces. Like, it just looked so, it's so difficult for them to wait.
Yeah.
But it's relatable. I feel like now we wouldn't have that kind of struggle, but as children, yes, definitely.
Okay, let's just sum it up then. So,
I mean, we didn't talk about dopamine or anything.
oh, yeah, true. What is there to say? We love dopamine. Who doesn't love dopamine?
Dopamine pathway. So, yeah, cocaine works with dopamine.
Wait, should we mention that dopamine is a neurotransmitter, or did we already say that?
I don't know, but it is a neurotransmitter.
It's an excitatory neurotransmitter. But dopamine, it's there's a reward. The dopamine pathway is the reward center, and then dopamine can travel throughout the brain, and then it excites like different areas.
Yeah,
that's what it does.
It starts from the
That's what I'm
midbrain.
saying.
Yeah.
And so one of those areas, okay, is the amygdala, or maybe the amygdala processes the excitatory response from dopamine, and that's what makes you get this wonderful feeling when there's a good reward.
Yeah, when you're drinking the 5th cup of the coffee in the day and you're just like so happy because you become an addict by now.
Yes, that's one of the things. Like dopamine, or at least the buildup of dopamine can lead to addiction and desensitization. For example, like you want to talk about cocaine.
Yeah, let's talk about cocaine, guys. So in the cleft, in the neurons, right? There's dopamine release as it goes, and then cocaine, what it does is it blocks this protein.
Dopamine transmitter protein.
Nope.
Transporter.
Dopamine transporter protein is blocked by cocaine, and what's like the dopamine, there's just a buildup there in the synaptic cleft. There's so much dopamine and no one is taking it out, which it should be taken out. There shouldn't be as much, but because of cocaine, because it blocked the protein, there's just a bunch of dopamine, and that's why you're like insanely happy.
Yes.
You're like, oh my god,
ecstatic for absolutely no reason.
You just want this feeling again and again because it's amazing.
Yeah.
Of course.
And the desensitization part can happen when you like start building more receptors.
Yes, you build more receptors on the postsynaptic cleft because
it's the membrane, not the cleft.
Sorry, my brain is not working.
Yeah,
on the membrane because you have so much dopamine, so your body will adapt and be like, oh my god, we need more receptors so we can deal with this.
And so
buildup.
Yeah, when you don't get that same amount of dopamine from the druggies, then you feel terrible because you want your dopamine. You have a higher threshold,
so you use more drugs.
Yes,
and then you overdose.
And that can sure, you can go there as well. This can also apply to like just sugar addiction as well, which is a real thing. Sugar can also activate those dopamine pathways.
Honestly, anything.
Yeah.
Just watching series will
boost. Social media as well, especially for that, because it's dopamine, unlike serotonin. It's responsible for a shorter response. Serotonin is more lasting, I think.
Those memes on the Instagram reels are
Yeah, you can't stop watching
really
them.
getting me. Yeah, so what else? Oh, schizophrenia.
Oh, it's not schizophrenia.
Schizophrenia.
Yes.
Sorry, schizophrenia. I don't know. It's yeah, I don't know that much about it. Like the mechanism
Yeah.
is just it's to do with some sort of like I wanted to say a lagging. I was thinking of a lagging strand.
Oh,
That's so sad.
okay. No, we're getting mixed up in biology terms.
Yeah, no, it's like there's some sort of dysfunction in the dopamine pathway or like dopamine production.
Mhm.
I don't remember. I think it was too much.
It was too much.
It was too much.
Yeah, and then you get
Something to do with
overwhelmed.
that. Yes, there's too much stimuli,
Yeah.
and that causes that. Not causes. It's just could be
Maybe
genetic.
because like
A lot of
your
it is
neurons, yeah, your neurons get excited so easily, so you get kind of like
genetic. Yeah,
overstimulated. So
that's true.
Yeah.
Amazing.
And that's it for the frontal lobe. We covered the prefrontal cortex, clearly seen through the frontal temporal dementia with the behavior change, and then the primary motor cortex.
It's just there and responsible for you thinking, I want to get these muscles on my
Jacked.
hands, so I will lift.
What is that? 0.5 kilograms?
It is.
Yes.
And you voluntarily, with consent from yourself, you lift shit, and
Yes.
you weren't happy about that.
Yeah.
And that's in the frontal cortex. Your brain in the frontal cortex is responsible for you wanting to lift and get jacked.
Yes. And then we talked about the Broca's area a bit. Not really that much,
I mean,
but
it's
language.
Clear. It was found by Broca,
Yes.
working on his patients, as everyone did in the old days.
Mm-hmm. Was it a biopsy that he did?
Maybe?
I
I'm
don't
not sure.
know.
It was.
Anyways,
He
was
was
like
doing things in the brain,
yeah.
and he was like, "Oh my god, this." Oh, was there? Oh, I don't remember, but there was this guy.
Tan.
Yes, Tan.
Yeah, all he could say was Tan. And then surgeon cut up his brain. And then he found like, oh, so that's why he's always saying Tan. It's because his language processing part of the brain is kind of wonky.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I think that was Wernicke.
Yeah, it might have
was
been
Wernicke.
Okay, so what is Wernicke's area?
Yeah. Okay, Wernicke's area is kind of like Broca's area, except it's more responsible for like understanding speech more so than like verbalizing, producing speech. So that's why Tan was a bit only capable of saying Tan and only knowing.
Wernicke's area is not in the frontal lobe, but that's fine.
Yeah.
That's fine. They're connected. So I mean, everything is connected in the brain. The amygdala that we kept on mentioning is in the temporal.
There was limbic system.
It's a limbic system.
Yes.
So that's Broca's area. Yeah.
Then of course we talked about the dopamine pathway. Cocaine, sugar addiction. That's it.
Yeah, it's just there. Be happy for your dopamine pathway, because, I mean, it's joy to be just inflicted with dopamine.
Yes.
And be addicted to coffee.
Mm-hmm.
It's nice.
No consequences at all.
Try it at home.
Yes. Thank you, I guess.
Yeah,
like,
this is,
if you really spent these 27, almost 28 minutes listening to us, that's dedication.
Yeah, we are very happy that you are dedicated.
Yes,
your
our
time.
dopamine pathways are excited as we telepathically know that you are here with us.
Yes, it's amazing. Happy Halloween.
Okay, bye. Ooh. Why is it still recording?